Well, there are two lines from The Princess Bride that I love.
Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father.
Some movie lines live forever, but sometimes they mean more than we realize. When Mandy Patinkin said, "I want my father back,"
I want my father back.
he wasn't just playing Inigo Montoya. But when a show host asked Mandy Patinkin a simple question, "Did you really mean it?" it unearthed something cathartic. It turns out that great acting has been defined by pain all along, and what started as a movie quote became a true moment of connection between grief and legacy. This is the one Princess Bride line Mandy Patinkin will never forget. Despite its modest beginnings, The Princess Bride has become one of the greatest cult movies of our time. Initially released on September 25, 1987, it follows the adventures of a swashbuckling farmhand named Westley, accompanied by friends he made on his journey, on a quest to save his true love, Princess Buttercup, from the main antagonist, Prince Humperdinck. The movie was adapted from the adventure comedy novel of the same name by William Goldman. Maintaining the same metafictional style used by Goldman, it started with a grandfather reading the novel to his sick grandson. The grandson called the story a bluff, but deep within, he was about to be transported to a fantasy world that would change his outlook on life forever. The Princess Bride was supposed to be just another fairy tale, another bedtime story. But it didn't fade away like every other box office release, forgotten after 3 months. As You Wish, the movie that refuses to die. Despite being released 37 years ago, The Princess Bride is one movie that lives rent-free in our heads from Gen X to Millennials to Gen Zs. The list of perfect movies in the world seems to get shorter with the release of each new movie. But The Princess Bride has retained its place, not just only in our hearts, but in many best of lists, consistently ranking between top 10 and top 20 as one of the few perfect movies. It remains critically acclaimed because of its timeless blend of humor, witty dialogues, intense performances, and universal themes that appeal to audiences of all ages. It is one of those movies that successfully transcends the fine line between solemnity and irony while maintaining a cinematic experience. The movie is known more for its outstanding and iconic lines,
I have been in the revenge business so long.
as well as its all-star cast, including Cary Elwes, Robin Wright, Chris Sarandon, Mandy Patinkin, Christopher Guest, Billy Crystal, Fred Savage, Wallace Shawn, and Peter Falk. The romantic piece was so epic that it landed on the American Film Institute's 100 Greatest Love Stories of All Time list. The praise of The Princess Bride was so widespread that everywhere you turn, you must hear at least one person saying something good about the movie. As one user puts it on the Do Review platform, very fun stuff all around. Excellent dueling scenes, witty banter that inspires quotes all over the place to this day, and a great cast. It's so rare that a movie combines this much goodness into a single package, but they sure did with this film. It seems that a movie has never been so iconic, such that when words about plans of a remake started swirling around, so many people were against the idea. In fact, Cary Elwes tweeted, "There is a shortage of perfect movies in this world. It would be a pity to damage this one." A YouTube user once even said that he doesn't want anything to change in the movie, apart from some slight changes in the grandpa scenes. But for all the rave that the movie received, viewers and critics alike couldn't get over the iconic lines used. These lines have become so popular that they are now immortalized in cinematic history. But these lines didn't just come to be. They were given life by the different characters who uttered them, and that life they have carried on to this day. The real magic of the movie was buried in what was said. But the real question is, why does it still haunt those that said it? So before we get too deep into the behind the scenes, let's rewind a bit and meet the cast and the lines that made them timeless. Inconceivable. How casting The Princess Bride almost went very, very wrong. From child star to seasoned veteran, the cast of The Princess Bride was carefully curated, with each star bringing some outstanding dimension into their roles, no matter how small. You can well agree with me that the Princess Bride cast was so perfect that it would be absolutely inconceivable to imagine the roles being played by different people. The ensemble gave life to the character and their lines that we can't help but think they were made for this. Starting off with the character most central to The Princess Bride, the Princess Buttercup herself, played by Robin Wright. Before she starred in the movie, Robin was more into the soap opera part of entertainment when she had garnered some level of popularity. However, The Princess Bride opened more doors than one for her, as her performance in the project aided her transition from daytime television to the world of movies, earning her a spot in Robert Zemeckis' Forrest Gump. But surprisingly, here is the twist. Robin was not the first consideration for Buttercup. She was not even among the first 10. She revealed at the 57th KVIFF that landing the role was even by accident. According to her, she got the role partly because she could do a British accent, as her mother's husband was British, and partly because Robert Reiner, the director of the movie, was tired of the casting process, having auditioned 250 different actresses. She was the 251st candidate and was only 21 at the time. Well, her lucky stars must be working overtime, because that stroke of luck immortalized her name in cinematic history. In her words, "We had no idea the film would become such a legend. It did attract considerable attention upon release, but it was not a box office hit." Cary Elwes's casting as Westley was a different story from Robin's. Even before meeting him, Reiner had already decided in his mind that Elwes was going to play the role of Westley, a decision he made after he saw Elwes' performance in the film Lady Jane. At this point, there was only one thing that needed to be done: arranging a meeting with Elwes. At the time, Elwes was in Berlin, Germany, where he was involved in another movie filming. Reiner traveled all the way to Berlin with his producing partner to meet with him. During the meeting, which took place in Elwes's hotel room, Elwes did an impression of Fat Albert, showing his humorous side, and then read Westley's Fire Swamp monologue for Reiner. His enthusiasm, his natural charisma, and his performance sealed the deal. It was later discovered that Elwes's love for The Princess Bride book may have actually stoked the enthusiasm he displayed on his audition day. When he was only 13, his stepfather got him a copy of the book, and he was instantly hooked, especially with Westley's character, which left him enamored. Getting to play the same character on screen must have been some sort of dream come true. The casting of the rest of the cast was surprisingly very easy. For example, the role of Inigo Montoya was basically offered on a platter to Mandy Patinkin. But what the directors didn't know at the time was that the role meant more to him than they could understand. Mandy said that the character of Inigo spoke profoundly to him. Well, for the rest of the company that Inigo kept, Wallace Shawn was not the original casting choice for Vizzini. In fact, the person they had in mind was Danny DeVito, but the moment he took the role, he owned it. What's even more iconic was that the very thing that made him so popular in The Princess Bride was the reason he was selected in the first place: his frequent delivery of the word inconceivable. For the role of Fezzik, on the other hand, both William Goldman and Reiner already knew it was going to be played by Andre the Giant, as he was the only option that came to mind for them. A fun fact: at the time Andre the Giant was cast, he was largely an inexperienced actor. According to Reiner, he couldn't understand a word of what Andre was saying during the audition, despite the fact that he was physically fit for the part. Reiner had to record Andre's part on tape and have him study it. They almost didn't get the role. But once they did, every line became legendary, from "as you wish" to "inconceivable." These weren't just quotes, they were magic. Let's break down how the perfect cast gave us the most iconic lines in movie history: the sick kid and the kissing book. The first ever memorable line in The Princess Bride was found not in the main story, but in the frame story, the beginning, where a grandfather wanted to read a story to his grandchild, who was not so interested in it. In the scene, the grandfather bursts into the room, pinches the kid's cheeks and tells him, "Hey, I bought you a present," to which the kid, unimpressed, replies after opening the present, "A book?" What follows after this was one of the most memorable exchanges in the movie. The grandfather replies, "When I was your age, televisions were called books." The grandfather tells the boy he's going to read the book to him, and the boy asks, "Has it got any sports in it?" "Are you kidding? Fencing, fighting, torture, revenge, giants, monsters, chases, escapes, true love, miracles," was the grandfather's response. The kidnap, the giant, and the swordsman. Perhaps another memorable scene with outstanding lines was the kidnap scene. After Princess Buttercup's marriage to Prince Humperdinck was announced, we are made aware that she found no joy because she was not in love with the prince. The only thing that seems to give her some form of happiness is her solo rides, and it was in one of these rides that she encountered the three outlaws, Vizzini, Fezzik, and Inigo. She stops when she sees them, and Vizzini addresses her. "Excuse me, my lady, we are but poor lost performers. Is there a village nearby?" To which Buttercup innocently and naively replied, "There is nothing nearby, not for miles." Unknown to her, she has given the kidnappers a perfect moment to nab her because the next reply she got from Fezzik was completely unexpected. "Then there will be no one to hear you scream." The scene immediately following this was another cinematic golden moment. In this scene, Vizzini was trying to leave traces of the kidnapping by maliciously setting evidence, tying it to Gilder, the neighboring land, and Florin's sworn enemy. Fezzik asks him what he was doing, and Vizzini tells him about the plan to kill Princess Buttercup and make it look like the Gilderans did it. Displeased with the idea, Fezzik said, "You never said anything about killing anyone," to which Vizzini replied, "I've hired you to help me start a war. It's a prestigious line of work, with a long and glorious tradition." Still not satisfied, Fezzik said, "I just don't think it's right, killing an innocent girl." Vizzini's reply to Fezzik has to be the most iconic line ever recorded. He said, "Am I going mad, or did the word 'think' escape your lips? You were not hired for your brains, you hippopotamic landmass." Totally inconceivable. Vizzini appears to be the tertiary antagonist of the movie, a criminal but genius mastermind whose intellect turns out to be his own undoing. He assumes himself to be the smartest man in the world, and in one of his encounters with the masked black man, he called Plato, Aristotle, and Socrates morons. Between the trio, he is seen as the evil one and is not even bothered by the idea of killing the princess. Probably that's why he died in the story. Vizzini was portrayed as a madcap with a strong aversion to failure. He has the tendency to belittle Fezzik and Inigo and say the word inconceivable. In fact, his constant use of the word led to one of the most remembered lines in the movie. The first scene where he used the word was when they were all in a boat at dusk, trying to make an escape after kidnapping the princess. Inigo is constantly looking over his shoulders to ensure that they were not being followed. Vizzini's reply to him is, "That would be inconceivable." Inigo looks over his shoulder again, and Vizzini tells him to stop doing that. Still unsure, Inigo says, "Are you sure nobody is following us?" To which Vizzini replies, "As I said, it would be absolutely, totally, and in all other ways." Vizzini's use of inconceivable was also mostly tied to when his plans go awry. When they realize that the boat that Inigo spotted might actually be following them, they take a detour and climb up a cliff, which was basically Vizzini's idea, as he was certain that no other person aside from Big Fezzik could embark on such a feat. When Inigo tells him that a masked man in black was climbing the rope and gaining fast on them, Vizzini once again screams, "Inconceivable," in disbelief. When they get to the top of the cliff, Vizzini hurries to cut the rope, in hopes that they will lose the man. However, when they look down, they see the masked man in black clinging to the rocks, to which Vizzini screams, "He didn't fall! Inconceivable!" At this point, Inigo, probably tired of hearing this word over and over again, said to him, "You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means." Hand combat. As the movie progresses, we are exposed to greater iconic scenes that beat the previous ones. Another unforgettable scene was the fight scene between the man in black and Fezzik. When Fezzik notices that the man is catching up with them, he throws a rock at him, missing him by just a hair's breadth. He tells the masked man that he missed him on purpose and suggests a duel. We face each other as God intended. Sportsmanlike. No trick, no weapon. Skill against skill. The masked man, partly taken aback and partly seeking clarity, asks, "You mean you'll put down your rock, and I'll put down my sword, and we'll try and kill each other like civilized people?" Fezzik says, "I can kill you now." Dropping his sword, the masked man says, "Frankly, I think the odds are in your favor in hand fighting," to which Fezzik, feeling flattered, replies, "It's not my fault for being the biggest and the strongest. I don't even exercise." The evil prince. We cannot mention iconic lines in The Princess Bride without mentioning our not-so-loved Prince Humperdinck, played by none other than Chris Sarandon. Despite his evil character, Prince Humperdinck did indeed leave us with some unforgettable lines. After the princess's kidnapping, Prince Humperdinck and his men trail the kidnappers. When they get to the top of the cliff where Inigo and the masked man dueled, the prince is able to tell the details of the duel from their footprints, and notes that the winner of the duel is on his way to Gildare, suggesting they follow his trail. His vizier, Count Rugen, asked, "Could this be a trap?" To which the prince replies, "I suspect everything could be a trap, which is why I'm still alive." Another iconic scene involving the prince is when he escorts Count Rugen to the entrance of the Pit of Despair. The Count asks the prince if he wants to watch him torture Wesley, to which the prince replies, "Tyrone, you know how much I love watching you work, but I've got my country's 500th anniversary to plan, my wedding to arrange, my wife to kill, and Gilder to frame for it. I'm swamped." This has got to be one of the most famous villain lines in history. Miracle Max and the mostly dead hero. But what would we make of this video if we did not mention one of the most fan-favorite lines ever in The Princess Bride? After Fezzik and Inigo found Wesley's body in the forest, they took him to Miracle Max, who was fired from his services by the prince. One of his most iconic lines was, "Why would you want a miracle man the king's stinking son fired? I might kill whoever you want me to miracle." In his short 5-minute appearance on screen, Miracle Max gave such a wonderful, unforgettable performance that it made him one of the most beloved characters in the movie. While working on Wesley, Inigo urges him to hasten the process. He replies, "Don't rush me, Sonny. You rush a miracle, man. You get rotten miracles." He asks Inigo if he got any money, but finds out that the amount they have is too small. He tells them he has never worked for such a small amount, except it is noble. Inigo replies that Wesley's case is a noble cause. Miracle Max then says, "He probably owes you some money. Well, I'll ask him." Inigo replies, "He's dead. He can't talk." Miracle Max goes, Hoo, look who knows so much. It just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead. Mostly dead is slightly alive. With all dead, well, with all dead, there's usually only one thing you can do. Inigo asks, "What's that?" Max replies, "Go through his clothes and look for loose change." A fun fact that makes all of Miracle Max's lines more iconic is that they were almost all created on the spot. The reunion. The most heartwarming scene in The Princess Bride was the reunion between Buttercup and Westley. Sad that she had married the evil Prince Humperdinck, Buttercup resolved to end it all. After kissing the king goodbye, she goes to her room, sits on a chair, and brings out a dagger with which she was to execute the deed. But just as she was about to go ahead with her plan, Westley, who is already in the room, stops her, saying, "There is a shortage of perfect breasts in the world. It would be a pity to damage yours." This line is arguably the most enduring from the movie, as fans continue to quote it endlessly. It has even been turned into countless GIFs and inspired numerous TikTok parodies. Immortalized revenge. The one line Mandy Patinkin will never forget. In The Princess Bride, there was one character we all openly rooted for, whether quietly or actively. It was none other than Inigo Montoya, played by Mandy Patinkin. Inigo Montoya was a Spanish swordsman with a life mission to avenge his father, who was killed by a six-fingered man who later turned out to be none other than Count Tyrone Rugen. It happens that Inigo's father, Inigo Montoya, was a great but rather unknown swordsmith. His lack of fame was credited to his dislike for dealing with the rich and privileged. However, Inigo caught the attention of Count Tyrone Rugen, who requested that he forge a sword for him that could accommodate his unusual grip. The sword took a year to complete, and when he sent word to Count Rugen that it was complete, the Count refused to pay the agreed price, stating that he would only pay a tenth of the price. Inigo refused to give him the sword, not merely because the Count did not pay the agreed sum, but more because the Count could not appreciate the sword's craftsmanship. He then declares that the sword would belong to his son, Inigo, instead. Rugen then promptly kills Inigo. 11-year-old Inigo witnessed this gory crime, and being a man, he challenged the fearsome Rugen to a duel. As expected, the more experienced Rugen disarms Inigo in less than a minute, but is astonished by the boy's fencing skills. Acknowledging Inigo's talent, Rugen made a decision that would later haunt him. He spared the boy's life and allowed him to keep the sword, but not without first scarring him on each cheek. To fulfill his mission, Inigo dedicated his life, every waking moment of his life, to perfecting his swordcraft. He trained under the tutelage of the best fencing masters of his time. After intensive training for 10 years, he became known as a wizard, a legendary title rank in fictional fencing that is higher than that of a master. To pay his bills while on the quest for revenge, he worked for Vizzini. Inigo finally gets to fulfill his revenge mission when he storms the castle with Westley and Fezzik to rescue Princess Buttercup. During the rescue, we witnessed one of the most iconic duels, fueled by revenge and driven by a son's quest for justice for his father's unlawful death. After defeating a handful of men, he comes face to face with Rugen and says the most remembered line from the movie, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." Assuming a dueling stance, Count Rugen surprises us by making a run for his life. Inigo goes after him, but he is injured in his stomach from a knife thrown by the Count. He apologizes to his father for failing, but never gives up. The Count taunts him for his failure, telling him that he's got an overdeveloped quest for vengeance that's going to get him in trouble someday. The Count then tries to finish him off with his sword, but Inigo blocks the attack. This is probably the most emotional scene in the movie because, at this point, Inigo didn't let his injury and lack of strength hold him back. "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die," Inigo says. He advances on Rugen, but stumbles into the table with sudden pain. Rugen attacks, but he parries and rises to his feet again. "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die," he says again. Rugen attacks one more time, and Inigo parries more fiercely, regaining strength. He goes again. "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." Exasperated already by the consistent use of this line, Rugen says, "Stop saying that," and then attacks Inigo twice. Inigo dodges the attack and wounds Rugen in both shoulders, the same spot where he wounded Inigo. At this point, Inigo attacks, bellowing, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." He corners Count Rugen, knocks his sword aside, and gives him an identical scar to the one Rugen gave to him years ago while he was still a boy on one of his cheeks. Sensing that he is already at the losing end, Count Rugen offers Inigo money and a position in a bid to get him to spare his life. Inigo gives him the same identical mark on the other cheek. But being a schemer all his life, Rugen attempts to turn the tide over. He knocks Inigo's swords and lunges, but Inigo traps him in what would be his final moment. It is here he tells Rugen that, "I want my father back, you piece of work." His mission was completed. He had ended it all. Inigo finally got justice for his father's death. But the immortalization of this scene came not merely from the lines themselves, but from the man who gave life to those lines. Years later, when Mandy Patinkin was already an older man, in an interview with George Stroumboulopoulos Tonight, he revealed the lines from The Princess Bride, he can never forget. The interviewer asked him if the fire he felt while avenging his father's death in the movie was something he felt for real, or if it was just acting. In response to this, Mandy said that when Rob Reiner, the director of the movie, gave him the script and asked him to choose the role he would like to play, he was drawn to Inigo's character and decided to play the part, which he got. In his words, "But the minute I saw that part, I never wavered from it to this day. My mind said, Mandy, if you get that part, and you play that guy, and you get that six-fingered guy, and you get him, that's cancer. And if you get him, your dad will come back." And that was my, "If you build it, he will come." You know, that was my field of dreams. However, despite the popularity of the dueling scene, the line that sticks with Mandy the most is one that no one expects. After defeating Count Rugen and the others have fulfilled their mission, we experience one of the most emotionally charged window scenes between two friends. Inigo tells Wesley, "You know, I have been on this revenge mission for a long time. Now that it's over, I don't know what to do with the rest of my life." Wesley, in response to this, asks, "Have you ever considered piracy? You'd make a wonderful Dread Pirate Roberts." Mandy acknowledges in the interview that this was the scene that touched and appealed to him the most. According to him, when he acted in the movie, his 26-year-old self didn't even know the meaning of those words. The realization came to him much later, when he was preparing for a concert. He got back into his hotel room and saw his wife watching the movie on TV, and he got to rewatch the last scene again. In his words, "I was 26 years old, I think, when I made that film, and there's the last scene in the movie, and the last line in the movie, and I'm looking at it, and we have it on, and I hear the guy who's played by me say this last line in the movie, and it, to me, became the line of the film for me and of my life. That the kid who said it never even realized what he was saying when he said it. And the line that I love the most for me from that movie is, "I have been in the business so long now that it's over. I do not know what to do with the rest of my life." Mandy has told us the one Princess Bride line he'll never forget. Now, how about you? What is that one Princess Bride line you will never forget? Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you enjoy this video, click on the next video on your screen.